Okay, so we know the kook is sitting at 23A. Not here.
That's right. And what's your opinion?
My opinion is they should get the hell back here as fast as they can.
Airport is a 1970 American drama film directed by George Seaton with an all-star cast that is widely considered the start of the modern disaster movie genre. Taking place at Chicago's fictional Lincoln International Airport, a Trans Airlines Boeing 707 becomes stuck in a snowstorm, closing down the runway. Airport manager Mel Bakersfield, played by Burt Lancaster, is stuck there and forced to work overtime, causing a continued strain on his marriage with his wife Cindy, played by Dana Winter.
We've got to call a truce, even if it's a pretense. We've got to start being civil to each other.
And add hypocrisy to the problem? They'd see through that in a minute. That's not the answer.
Well, we've got to do something.
You're right. And the only answer is a divorce.
Also adding to the likelihood of a divorce is Bakerfeld's close relationship with customer relations agent Tanya Livingston, played by Gene Seberg.
I'll be back in time for his call.
You're not going anywhere. You're exhausted. You've been rushing around for 3 days.
I've got to get up there.
Why do you have to do everything yourself? You got an assistant. Let Mike do it. Now sit down and relax. Fix you some coffee and a sandwich. Oh, one thing you should do. You promised to call your wife back.
Bakersfield calls in assistance from TWA mechanic Joe Petroni, played by actor George Kennedy.
Do you have to go to work on a night like this?
They don't call them emergencies anymore. They call them Petronis.
I suppose you'll be late, huh?
I'll be back in time if I have to pull that plane out with my teeth.
Captain Vernon Demarest, played by Dean Martin, is a Trans Airlines pilot scheduled to fly on Trans Flight 2 from Chicago to Rome to evaluate pilot Anson Harris, played by actor Barry Nelson. Despite being married to Bakerfeld's sister Sarah, played by Barbara Hale, he has been carrying on an affair with stewardess Gwen, played by Jacqueline Bisset.
No, it's pilot check flight. I'm checking Anson Harris.
But he's been a captain for years.
So have I, but that doesn't matter. Somebody's got to check you out every 6 months just to make sure you don't pick up any bad habits.
Gwen has become pregnant from Dean Martin's seed. Adding to these plot lines are a mentally ill man named Dio Guerrero, played by actor Van Heflin, who brings a bomb on board with the intention of blowing up the plane over the Atlantic Ocean so that his wife Inez, played by Maureen Stapleton, can collect a large insurance policy.
He, was sick.
Mental patient? Mrs. Guerrero, what did your husband do in the Army?
He was a demolition expert.
And I suppose in his excavation work he used explosives?
Also starring Helen Hayes as an elderly stowaway and Lloyd Nolan as a U.S. Customs officer, all of these storylines and characters converge right on top of each other.
Okay, New York, go ahead.
Strong probability, repeat, strong probability exists that passenger D.O. Guerrero, seat assignment 23A, may have an explosive device in a attaché-type briefcase.
Now, this film was based on Arthur Haley's 1968 novel of the same name and became a huge hit at the box office. When released on May 29, 1970, Airport grossed over $128.4 million. That is a colossally high amount for a movie in 1970. It was the first movie to be shown at New York City's Radio City Music Hall Theater as their Easter attraction. Airport was the second highest grossing film of 1970, beating out other big hits such as MASH and Patton, and just barely losing the number one spot of the year to the romance drama Love Story. Filmed at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport in Minnesota in 1969, they chose that location due to the snowy weather, and lucky enough for them, a snowstorm struck during production. This was one of the very first movies to ever show the use of a touch-tone telephone during a time when rotary phones were most common. The computer terminal used by the reservation agents in the movie are also some of the first interactive computer terminals that ever existed, first introduced in 1964. Burt Lancaster and Dean Martin both received an enormous amount of money for working on this film. Lancaster had a contract that gave him a 10% profit once the movie hit $50 million at the box office. Dean Martin received 10% of the film's gross and added an additional $7 million to his salary. Dean Martin said that Vernon Demarest was one of his favorite characters that he ever had a chance to play in a movie, but he was very fearful of flying in real life, even taking a train to arrive in Minneapolis for filming. Burt Lancaster didn't care for the film, allegedly calling the movie the worst piece of junk ever made. He said he only agreed to star in the film so that the studio would agree to finance some more non-commercial movies that he was interested in making. At the behest of Dean Martin, Petula Clark was offered the role of Stewardess Gwen. The role eventually went to actress Jacqueline Bisset. Actress Jean Arthur turned down the role of the elderly stowaway Ada Quansett, which would eventually go to actress Helen Hayes.
Whatever happened back there just now, you can forget. That's not the reason you were brought here.
Mrs. Quonset, I hope I didn't hurt you.
No, not much.
Helen Hayes actually won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for the role of the sneaky, scheming old lady on an airplane. The film aired on the ABC TV network on November 11th, 1973, and it became one of the most watched television broadcasts at the time. Overall, this movie is best remembered for 3 reasons. Number 1, it was so successful that it spawned 3 sequels. Number 2, it set off a chain reaction of disaster films that would become one of the largest genres of movies throughout the 1970s. While not technically the first disaster movie, many consider Airport sort of the default of the modern disaster film. And lastly, this film and the sequels would inspire a spoof movie called Airplane in 1980, which was another huge box office hit and, especially among generations born in the 1980s and after, may actually be better remembered than Airport itself.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Doctor, I've checked everyone. Mr. Stryker's the only one.
What flying experience have you had?
Well, I flew single-engine fighters in the Air Force, but this plane has 4 engines. It's an entirely different kind of flying, altogether.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.
I enjoyed this film as a nice taste of the carefree days of relaxed airline travel, and the star-studded cast make Airport a movie worth checking out.